If you watch a Rush concert from the 50-something tour, you'll probably focus on the obvious things first. Geddy Lee's bass lines, Alex Lifeson's guitar work, Anika Nilles handling some of the most demanding drum parts ever written. But hidden beneath all of that is something most fans never notice: a silent language. No words, no microphones, no giant gestures, just tiny signals exchanged between three musicians who have to navigate complex songs in real time. And here's what makes it fascinating. Rush is performing music filled with tempo changes, odd time signatures, extended instrumental sections, and sudden transitions. Songs like Xanadu, La Villa Strangiato, and 2112 leave very little room for mistakes. One missed entrance can create a chain reaction across the entire band. Yet night after night, the performances remain remarkably tight. Many modern touring acts rely heavily on click tracks and automated cues to keep everything locked together. But the chemistry developing between Geddy, Alex, and Anika appears to be built on something much older and much more human: listening and communication. During preparations for the tour, Anika revealed that the group was essentially relearning how to play together after more than a decade away from the stage. She described the process as a collaborative rebuilding of rhythm and feel rather than simply memorizing notes. That detail becomes incredibly important once you start studying concert footage. Watch closely during instrumental passages. You'll see Geddy glance toward the drum riser. You'll notice Alex briefly turn his head before a transition. Sometimes Anika's eyes move from her kit to the front of the stage for only a fraction of a second. Most audience members never notice these moments, but they may be the glue holding everything together. And one specific signal appears over and over again throughout the show: a tiny head nod. So subtle that if you blink, you'll miss it. Yet it might be the most important cue on the entire tour. The first time you notice it, it doesn't seem important. A quick nod, a slight movement of the head, nothing dramatic. But once you know what you're looking for, you start seeing it everywhere. During several songs on the 50-something tour, subtle head movements appear just seconds before major transitions. These aren't theatrical stage gestures meant for the audience. They're so small that they often disappear in wide camera shots, and that's exactly what makes them interesting. Professional musicians frequently use visual cues to coordinate difficult passages. In live performance situations, eye contact and body language can often communicate timing more effectively than spoken words. The more complex the music becomes, the more valuable those visual signals become. That reality is especially important for Rush music. Many classic Rush songs contain sections where the entire band must switch direction instantly. A song may move from a quiet atmospheric passage into a powerful riff, or shift between different time signatures with almost no warning for the audience. In rehearsal interviews, both Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson have emphasized how much attention they pay to one another while performing. Their musical relationship has been built over decades, creating a level of communication that often happens without speaking. Even after years away from touring, rebuilding that connection became a major part of preparing for live shows again. Sources interviews with Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson discussing tour rehearsals and band chemistry. What makes Anika Nilles' role so fascinating is that she had to learn this unspoken language from the outside. Imagine stepping into music originally created by three musicians who spent more than 40 years developing instincts together. You can't learn that from sheet music. You can't program it into a computer. You have to experience it. That's why many observers believe the small head nods serve as checkpoints throughout a performance. They appear before entrances, tempo changes, and major transitions where absolute confidence is required. And there's another signal that may be even more important: not a head nod, not eye contact, a foot movement. Most fans never see it because they're watching the hands. But some of the most critical communication on stage may actually be happening much lower than anyone expects. Most fans watch a concert from the waist up. They're focused on guitar solos, drum fills, and bass lines. But experienced musicians often pay attention to something completely different: body movement. The way a performer shifts their weight, the way they lean forward, the way they position themselves just before a major musical change. And on the 50-something tour, those movements may reveal an entire layer of communication happening beneath the music. Watch Alex Lifeson during longer instrumental sections. Just before certain transitions, he often changes posture slightly. Sometimes he turns toward center stage. Sometimes he angles his body toward Geddy Lee. The movement is subtle, but it creates a visual connection between the players. Geddy does something similar. Rather than standing completely still, he frequently adjusts his stance as a section approaches. To casual fans, it looks natural. To musicians, it can function as a visual countdown. The reason these cues matter is simple. Human beings react to movement faster than words. A band member doesn't need to say, "We're about to enter the next section." A shift in posture can communicate the same message instantly. This becomes even more important when performing songs that contain extended instrumental passages. During those moments, there may be no vocal cues available at all. The musicians must rely on listening, watching, and anticipating one another. Anika Nilles has spoken in interviews about learning the feel of the music rather than simply memorizing parts. That distinction matters because feel is what allows musicians to react naturally on stage when conditions change. A live performance is never exactly the same as a rehearsal. Tiny variations happen every night. That's where trust becomes essential, because trust allows musicians to follow one another without hesitation. And nowhere is that trust more visible than during eye contact. At first glance, eye contact seems obvious. Of course, band members look at one another. But when you start analyzing footage, frame by frame, a surprising pattern begins to emerge. The most important looks aren't the long ones. They're the incredibly short ones, sometimes lasting less than a second. And those split-second glances may be revealing exactly who is leading certain moments of the performance. If head nods are the punctuation marks of live performance, eye contact is the conversation itself. The challenge is that these conversations happen so fast that most audience members never see them. A glance, a look, a fraction of a second, then it's gone. Yet those tiny moments may be among the most important signals used on the 50-something tour. When musicians perform highly complex material, eye contact often serves as confirmation. One player signals readiness, another acknowledges it, and the transition happens. The audience hears only smooth music, never realizing how much communication occurred beforehand. This is especially significant for Rush songs. Many arrangements feature sections where every musician must arrive at the exact same point at the exact same time. Being even slightly early or late can change the feel of the entire passage. As concert footage is examined more closely, an interesting pattern emerges. Geddy Lee frequently acts as a visual anchor. Whether he's preparing for a vocal entrance, a section change, or a major musical shift, the other musicians often appear aware of his position and timing. That makes sense because the bass and vocals frequently serve as key reference points throughout a performance. At other moments, however, leadership appears to shift. During rhythmically demanding passages, attention often seems to move toward Anika Nilles. That isn't surprising. The drummer controls the pulse, and when a song contains complicated rhythmic figures, every musician naturally wants to stay connected to the source of that pulse. What's remarkable is how fluidly these roles appear to change. Nobody is permanently leading, nobody is permanently following. Instead, leadership moves to whichever musician has the most important responsibility in that particular moment. That's one hallmark of truly elite bands. The focus isn't on ego, it's on the music, but there is another layer of communication that may be even more powerful than visual cues. Because sometimes the trio doesn't appear to look at each other at all, yet they still execute difficult transitions perfectly. How? The answer may lie in something musicians often call active listening. And according to many professionals, that's where great bands separate themselves from good ones. By now we've looked at head nods, posture shifts, and split-second eye contact. But what if the most important signals aren't visual at all? What if they're audible? Many veteran musicians will tell you that the longer a band plays together, the less they rely on visible cues, and the more they rely on listening. Over time, they begin recognizing tiny details in one another's playing, details that most audience members never notice. A slightly stronger bass note, a guitar chord held a fraction longer, a drum fill played with a particular emphasis. To fans, these moments sound completely normal. To fellow musicians, they can function like signals. On the 50-something tour, this kind of listening may be especially important. Rush's music is filled with passages where timing isn't just about counting beats, it's about feeling exactly where the music is headed next. Anika Nilles has often spoken about the challenge of respecting the original material while bringing her own musical personality to the performance. That balance requires tremendous awareness. She isn't simply recreating old recordings, she's actively interacting with Geddy Lee and Lifeson in real time. And that interaction creates something unique. The songs breathe, they move, they evolve slightly from night to night. That's why many fans have noticed that the performances don't feel robotic. Even in the most technically demanding moments, there is still a sense of spontaneity. The reason may be simple. Instead of following a machine, the musicians are following one another. Every note becomes information. Every phrase becomes communication. Every transition becomes a shared decision. When three highly experienced performers reach that level of trust, something remarkable happens. The signals become almost invisible, not because they disappear, because they become part of the music itself. And that leads to the biggest question of all. What does this hidden communication reveal about the future of the 50-something tour? The answer may explain why so many fans have been surprised by just how natural this lineup feels. And it all comes down to one word: chemistry. At the beginning of this story, we asked a simple question. How do Geddy Lee, Lifeson, and Anika Nilles stay so tightly synchronized while performing some of the most challenging music in rock history? The answer isn't a flashy piece of technology. It isn't a giant screen full of instructions, and it isn't a secret device hidden backstage. Instead, it appears to be something far more powerful: communication, the kind that happens without words. Throughout the 50-something tour, fans have focused on the obvious headlines: the return of Geddy and Alex to the stage, the enormous challenge of performing classic Rush material again, and the arrival of Anika Nilles in one of the most demanding roles in modern rock. But beneath those headlines is another story, a story unfolding in real time during every performance. Tiny head nods, brief eye contact, subtle posture changes, musical phrases that function like signals, moments so small that most audience members never notice them. Yet together, they form a hidden language. What's particularly impressive is that this language wasn't built overnight. Geddy Lee and Lifeson spent decades developing an almost instinctive understanding of each other's playing. When Anika joined the project, she wasn't simply learning songs, she was learning how to become part of that conversation. And by many accounts, she has done exactly that. Fans and reviewers alike have praised the chemistry developing on stage, noting how naturally the trio navigates material that many believed would be nearly impossible to perform without the original lineup. That chemistry may be the most important signal of all. Because great bands don't just play notes together. They react, they anticipate, they trust. And trust is something audiences can feel even when they can't see it. So the next time you watch footage from the 50-something tour, don't focus only on the solos, the fills, or the famous songs. Watch the spaces between the notes. Watch the quick glance before a transition. Watch the tiny nod before a section change. Watch the moments when one musician seems to know exactly what another is about to do. Because that's where the real magic lives, not in the spotlight, not in the set list, but in the unseen signals that allow three musicians to move as one. And once you start noticing them, you'll never watch a Rush performance the same way again.